My name's Josh Callahan, and when I was 22, I lost everything. My family, my future, and every shred of trust one had in the people who raised me. Not because I failed or screwed up. No, that would have at least made sense. I lost it all because my little sister decided she wanted attention and didn't care who she burned to get it. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Oregon, we were the polished postcard family. Dad was a financial advisor who quoted Warren Buffett like scripture. Mom was a realtor who staged our entire house like HGTV was coming for brunch, and I was the overachieving son who made life look easy. Honor roll since middle school, captain of the baseball team, polite to adults, the works. I wasn't perfect, but I knew how to walk the tightrope they expected. And then there was Lily, the adopted daughter they brought home when I was 10 and she was 3. She was tiny, theatrical, and had our parents wrapped around her chubby fingers within 6 seconds. I remember being salty about it, sure, but I still did the big brother stuff. Taught her how to ride a bike, scared off her elementary school bully, and even missed homecoming once to attend her school play where she had exactly 3 lines and still managed to cry about not being the lead. She was always dramatic. The kind of kid who told stories that didn't make sense and then doubled down when called out. My art teacher has a secret twin, she'd claim, or, the dog told me you're hiding candy under your bed. You couldn't argue with her. You could only wait until the theatrics ran out of gas. By my senior year in college, I had my life lined up. A promising offer at a finance firm in Portland through one of Dad's connections. My GPA was on track, I was playing some of my best baseball, and I was finally eyeing the possibility of going pro, minor league, maybe. I wasn't rich, but I was stable and proud. And I thought, naively, that my family was proud of me too. Lily, on the other hand, had hit full-blown theater girl status by 15. Always auditioning for school plays, making TikToks with long, tearful monologues, and rolling her eyes every time my parents bragged about me. I didn't think much of it. Teenagers act like that. We weren't particularly close, but we weren't enemies either. I'd come home on holidays, bring her her favorite coffee, let her complain about high school drama. She'd make a few sarcastic jabs about how I had it easy, and I'd laugh it off. Then came the day everything fell apart. It was a random Tuesday in October. We'd just lost a series to one of our rivals, and Coach had punished us like we were auditioning for a Navy SEALs reality show. I was exhausted, legs shaking, shoulders sore, mind barely functioning. I hit the showers, got dressed, and checked my phone in the locker room. 37 missed calls, 54 texts, most of them from my family, a few from friends back home. Stuff like, "How could you? You're disgusting. Don't ever come back." My stomach twisted like someone had dropped it into a blender. I called my dad. He picked up and growled, "Get your ass home. Now. Don't go anywhere else," and hung up. No hello. No explanation. Just venom. I stood there in my cleats, wet hair still dripping, trying to process what the hell had just happened. I texted my mom. Nothing. Called my best friend Nick from high school. Voicemail. It felt like someone had detonated a social nuke, and I was standing at ground zero. The drive back to Cedar Falls was 23 minutes, but it felt like hours. I played the voicemails over and over in my head. What could I have possibly done? When I pulled up to my parents' house, there were 5 cars in the driveway. My Uncle Tom's beat-up Ford, Aunt Patty's minivan, my grandparents' Buick, and right in the center, like a warning sign, was Lily's red convertible, the one they gave her for her sweet 16. I stepped out of my truck, and before I even touched the porch, Uncle Tom came charging down like a linebacker who'd skipped warm-ups. "You piece of garbage," he spat, grabbing my hoodie and slamming me against my truck door. "I should knock your damn teeth out." His breath smelled like bourbon and rage. My first instinct was to deck him. I could have, easily, but I just stood there, frozen. I didn't even know what I was defending myself from. Dad came storming out with my Uncle Rick behind him. "Inside. Now," he barked without even looking me in the eyes. I walked into our living room, where I'd opened Christmas gifts just 10 months earlier. Now it was a courtroom, and I was the accused. My mom sat on the couch sobbing. My grandparents looked like someone had just kicked their dog. And Lily was curled up next to Grandma, crying into her shoulder like a fragile victim in a made-for-TV drama. Everyone turned and stared at me with a level of hatred I didn't know existed. And then my mom said the words that officially shattered my world. "How could you do that? To your own sister? What are you talking about?" I asked, looking around like maybe this was some weird hidden camera stunt. Dad stepped forward. His voice didn't even sound like him. Lily told us everything. How you've been sneaking into her room. For years. It hit me like a sucker punch to the ribs. I actually laughed at first. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. You've got to be kidding, I said. I've never. What? That's not even. She's my sister. She said you told her no one would believe her. That you'd hurt her if she spoke up, Mom snapped. And you were right. We didn't believe her. Until now. My knees buckled slightly. I scanned the room, waiting for someone, anyone, to step in. Grandma? Grandpa? Uncle Rick? Someone to say, hold up, let's talk this out. But no one did. Lily curled further into Grandma, her voice barely audible. He said it was our secret. That's when it all unraveled. Uncle Tom lunged at me again. You're gonna rot in prison, you freak. Dad and Uncle Rick held him back. I couldn't even speak. I tried, but the words jammed in my throat like concrete. Why the hell would I do that? Why would I ever? I said, looking around helplessly. But the jury had already ruled, and the judge was standing right in front of me, flexing his hand like he was ready to knock out his own son. And then he did. Dad punched me square in the jaw. Not a slap. Not a shove. A full wind-up that dropped me to the living room rug. My cheek split, and I tasted blood immediately. Mom screamed, but no one stopped him. He just stood over me and said, Get out. You're no son of mine. I looked up, dazed. Dad. I barely got it out before he grabbed the collar of my hoodie and dragged me toward the door like I was a sack of trash. Near the entryway, I saw 2 garbage bags already packed. My stuff. Baseball gear, shoes, clothes. He prepped my exile before I even arrived. He yanked my wallet from my back pocket, pulled out every card with his name, insurance, emergency credit, even my pharmacy discount card, tossed the wallet at my chest, and shoved me out the front door. I landed on the steps, shoulder first. The pain was instant and hot. Something tore. I heard it. Probably the same shoulder I'd iced 1,000 times after games. Then came the garbage bags. One thudded against my back. The other rolled into the flower bed. The door slammed. The porch light flickered out. Just like that, I was erased. I sat there, bleeding, stunned, and absolutely gutted. Neighbors peeked through curtains like we were a soap opera. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there, dazed, my breath fogging up in the cold. No cops. No investigation. No proof. No chance to defend myself. Just her words. That night, I slept in my truck, parked behind the local baseball field. The air was freezing, and my shoulder throbbed every time I shifted. I kept checking my phone, hoping idiotically that someone had come to their senses, that I'd get a text from Mom or Grandpa or someone saying, we messed up. Come home. Instead, my inbox was a graveyard. One unread message from Dad finally came through. Contact us again, and I'll file a restraining order. As far as we're concerned, you're dead. I spent the next few days in my truck, eating granola bars and gas station hot dogs, showering at the campus rec center when I could sneak in without looking like a vagrant. My shoulder was toast, swollen and stiff, a solid, don't lift your arm unless you enjoy pain situation. I was running on caffeine, rage, and blind hope that someone, anyone, would realize the story didn't make sense. I texted my grandma. No reply. I emailed my mom. Nothing. I even messaged my cousin Rachel, who once cried when I accidentally stepped on her Barbie. Silence. The only person who responded was Dad. One text. You were warned. Try again, and I'll call the police. I didn't know what was worse, the total abandonment or the fact that they all believed her without so much as a question. No one checked dates. No one asked where I was. No one remembered I'd been out of the state half the times Lily said things happened. My friend Ryan, a guy from the baseball team, was the only one who didn't ghost me. He let me crash on his couch, even offered to help me press charges against my dad for assault. You can't let this stand, man, he said. They'll ruin your life if you don't speak up. But I didn't have it in me. I was still shell-shocked, frozen in place like someone pulled the plug on my whole identity. And then the hammer dropped. 2 weeks later, I got a notice from my university. My tuition hadn't gone through. My parents had yanked financial support mid-semester. I went to the bursar's office in person, face still bruised, arm in a sling. The lady behind the desk looked at me with pity, like she already knew the end of the story. No cosigner, no credit history. I'm sorry, Josh. There's nothing we can do. So, I dropped from full-time to part-time and picked up a job bouncing at a bar near campus. Big guys in black t-shirts don't need clean records. that just need working arms, which I barely had. Coach tried to help at first. Let me stay on the team, told me to take time, heal up. But after enough missed practices, I became more mascot than player. My future in baseball was already shriveling like lettuce in a heat wave. Worse? The rumors were spreading. Somehow, despite no charges, no police report, no evidence, everyone seemed to know. I'd sit in class and feel people whispering. Girls would shift seats when I sat down. A classmate once left an anonymous note on my gym locker that just said, "You don't belong here." By winter, I was living in a busted apartment with two guys who barely acknowledged me. My truck's engine blew out on a delivery run, and with no money to fix it, I lost that job too. Then came the eviction notice. I moved into the baseball team's equipment shed. Coach found me there one night in February, bundled in 2 hoodies, wrapped in a sleeping bag, using my glove as a pillow. He didn't yell, just sat beside me on the concrete floor. "Son, what the hell happened to you?" So I told him. All of it. The lie. The punch. The total silence. And for the first time in months, someone listened. Coach didn't say, "I believe you." He didn't say much at all. He just nodded, helped me off the cold floor, and told me I could stay in the equipment shed until the semester ended. Next day, he brought me a space heater, an air mattress, and a Costco box of protein bars the size of a car battery. That man didn't need words. He gave me dignity. I barely scraped through the semester with a 2.1 GPA. The Dean's List version of me had vanished like a Snapchat memory. I wasn't a student-athlete anymore. I was just a guy with bad luck and good triceps. Coach hooked me up with a summer job out in Idaho, working a wilderness program for rich teens with attitude problems. Pay was decent, came with a staff cabin and meals. The first month was rough. Mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds, kids who thought getting dirt on their shoes was a trauma event, and hikes that made me question every gym rep I'd ever done. But slowly, something shifted. I rebuilt myself physically. Chopping wood, climbing trails with 50 pounds packs, teaching kids how to build fires, even when they cried because the marshmallows weren't organic. I gained 15 pounds of muscle and maybe a sliver of pride back. But mentally, I was wrecked. When I wasn't in the woods, I was drinking like my liver had wronged me. On days off, I'd get blackout drunk with the other guides. One of them introduced me to mushrooms. Another had a connection for coke. Nobody judged. We were all out there hiding from something. One night, a fellow guide named Troy died during a climbing trip. Slipped on wet rock, fell hard. I hadn't gone on that hike. I was too hungover to function. That should have been me holding the rope. I was supposed to be there. The program director, a soft-spoken ex-Marine named Clay, called me into his office. "You're good at this when you're sober, Josh. But when you're not, you're a damn liability. I can't have kids under your watch when you don't even care if you wake up tomorrow." He wasn't yelling. That's what made it worse. He just looked disappointed. I got fired the next day. What followed was a year of survival mode. I bought a used 1998 Honda Civic for $1,200, lived out of it, worked whatever jobs would take me. Event security, nightclub bouncer, even a few construction gigs, basically anything that let me use muscle and didn't ask about my past. I avoided women. I avoided kids. I avoided me. I'd walk out of restaurants if I saw a family with a daughter sit nearby. I didn't want a glance, a whisper, a risk. My only goal was, keep your head down and don't get accused again. But the fear followed me like a shadow. I had nightmares almost every night. In one, I was in prison. In another, I was back on my parents' porch, pounding on the door, begging them to listen. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, heart racing like I'd run a mile uphill. No one came for me. No one even remembered I existed. Until the night 3 guys decided to teach me a lesson. It was supposed to be a normal shift. Just another Friday night doing security at a bar in Fort Collins, the kind of place where frat guys flexed and sorority girls cried in bathroom stalls. I mostly stood by the door, checking IDs and keeping drunk business majors from brawling over spilled drinks. Then I saw him, Trent, a former tight end from my college. He saw me too. I gave a nod, polite, neutral, but he stared a beat too long, then leaned in to whisper to his table. Soon they were glancing over, whispering, smirking. By closing time, I walked out alone. The night air was cold. My shift had ended without a hitch. Until I hit the parking lot. 3 guys were waiting. Trent was one of them. "Hey, Predator," he said, like he was saying hello. I didn't get to respond before the first punch landed. Then another. Then a boot to the ribs. "You like hurting girls, huh?" Someone snarled. "Well, make sure you don't hurt anyone else." I fought back. I broke one guy's nose, but it was 3 against 1, and I was already running on fumes. I remember the pavement. I remember seeing blood. I remember a car pulling in and someone yelling. They ran. I woke up in a hospital bed with a cracked orbital socket, 3 busted ribs, a dislocated shoulder again, and a $17,000 medical bill taped to the four-pole like a friendly greeting. I had no insurance. No one to call. When the nurse asked who to list as emergency contact, I just said, nobody. They released me after 2 nights. I couldn't work, not like that. My savings were gone. I was living in my Civic, parked behind a Walmart. I washed in gas station sinks when I could lift my arm high enough. I wore the same clothes for days. Ate crackers, drank water, stared at my cracked phone like it might buzz. It never did. No calls. No texts. No apologies. My family was still gone. Just gone. I hit rock bottom on a rainy Wednesday night. Drove to an old bridge just outside town. It was high, quiet, and had no cameras. I left the car running. Climbed over the rail. My ribs screamed, but I didn't care. I stared down at the black water below. The rain soaked my hair. My hands trembled. I took out my phone one last time. The screen lit up with nothing. And then, a voice behind me. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? I almost slipped. I whipped around, heart in my throat. An old man in a yellow raincoat stood a few feet away, holding a fishing rod. I'm fine, I muttered. Nope, he said, steady as stone. I've seen fine. You're nodded. He took a step forward, calm as anything. Name's Frank. Marine Corps. I saw a few men at the edge. You want to talk? I wanted to scream. To tell him to go to hell. Instead, I broke. Words spilled out. All of it. The lie. The exile. The beatings. The loneliness. He didn't flinch. Just listened, nodded, and said, Son, you've been carrying this alone long enough. Let it down. Just for tonight. Come inside. Dry off. Eat something hot. You can decide tomorrow. And somehow, I climbed back over the rail. Frank's house was small, spotless, and full of military corners. His guest towels were folded like swans, and his fridge had exactly 2 beers, 3 eggs, and 18 types of hot sauce. He gave me a dry set of clothes that once belonged to his son, lost in Afghanistan 10 years ago. I didn't ask. He didn't offer. He made me shower while he cooked. Eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee so strong it could revive dead raccoons. I ate like I hadn't seen food in a week, because I hadn't. When I finished, he handed me a business card. Security firm. Executive clients. You've got the build, and clearly the discretion. I blinked. You don't know I'm innocent. He looked me dead in the face. I've read people longer than you've been alive. You're not lying. You're bleeding. There's a difference. That's how I ended up sleeping in his guest room and working for Franklin Protective Services. It was tough, but structured. Early workouts. Sharp uniforms. 0 alcohol. I had to go to a doctor for my injuries. Frank paid. Said I'd pay him back once I was steady. I also had to see a therapist, his Vietnam buddy, a hard-ass named Mort with a voice like gravel and 0 patience for self-pity. The work grounded me. High-end events, discreet clients, no questions asked. I learned how to walk like I belonged and skin a crowd without blinking. I earned back my own respect, one uneventful shift at a time. That's where I met Sophie, Frank's niece, and the only person who's ever looked at me like I wasn't broken. At first, we clashed. She was running an art gallery, wearing combat boots with her designer dress, and thought I was a walking neck tattoo in a security jacket. I thought she was a stuck-up rich girl who quoted Monet and drank oat milk. She caught me rolling my eyes during a painfully boring gallery talk, and we argued for 5 straight minutes about whether mood can be a color. By the end of the night, she asked me to change her condo's locks. We've been together ever since. Sophie knew something was wrong. She never pried, but Frank told me, you can't build a future while you're hiding the rubble of your past. So one night, I told her everything. When I finished, she held my hand and said, I believe you. No drama. No hesitation. I cried for 10 minutes. Then she kissed my forehead like it was a promise. 2 years later, I proposed. Frank walked her down the aisle. She wore a dress that looked like smoke and moonlight, and I wore a tux that almost made me look clean-cut. We bought a small home just outside Boise. We're expecting our first kid. The business is expanding. Sophie's art sells in New York now. We talk about building a life where our child never questions if they're loved. And then, one random Tuesday, my phone rang. Blocked number. I picked up. Josh, it's Mom. She sounded older, smaller, like someone had drained her voice of all its armor. I froze. 7 years of silence cracked like glass underfoot. She told me Lily confessed that everything had been a lie. I didn't say a word, just hung up. I told Frank. He didn't tell me what to do. He never does. He just said, "You already know what you want. You're just afraid to want it." He was right. I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop, public, daylight, neutral ground. Sophie sat beside me, Frank across the room, calm and watching. They showed up looking like a ghost version of the family I once knew. Mom with grayed hair and red eyes. Dad looking like a man who'd lost a war. And Lily, now 22, staring at the floor like it might forgive her. I let them talk. Lily confessed. Said she wanted attention. Said she didn't think it'd go that far. I listened. Then I stood up. "You didn't just ruin my life," I said. "You set it on fire." And then walked away from the smoke like it wasn't your house. They begged for forgiveness. I said nothing. But as I walked out with Sophie and Frank, I felt something shift. A weight fall. They no longer got to define me. That was mine now.